Hello. Hey, all you dynamic personalities out there. How are you today? I'm doing good myself. I'm so excited to be here. I always am when I get a chance to hop in here and talk to you. You know, I always do things planned. I'm not very much of a wild person, but I think later in my years I have become a wild person because I love just to hop on without any notice and just start talking to you. But today, let me tell you what we're going to be talking about, and then I want to share 3 points that we're going to be talking about. How to homeschool lesson plan easy. Now I have my 3 points over here on the side written on this page because I have so much to tell you in my over 25 years of homeschooling, but I can't tell you all in this one video. It won't do you or I any good if I just overwhelm you and not give you a point to walk away from here that you can actually implement today. So that's always my goal when I get on here to talk to you. Okay, how to homeschool lesson plan easy. Emphasis on easy. I like things simple. I like them easy. And here's the 3 points. If you'll stay with me to the end of the video, and I try to talk about 30 minutes. I have myself here on a timer, try to keep myself reined in. Of course, if you have questions, I'm gonna try to get to those too. But I'll try to get through the 3 points, and then if we have some time left over at the end, you can post your questions then too, or just post them now, it doesn't matter, or on the replay. I always try to reply to, even on the replay. Okay, hey Leah, hello, good to see you, good to have you here. Okay, look at these 3 points. Here's what I'm going to talk about. How many days do we actually have to lesson plan? What is a school year? Have you figured that part out yet? How many actual days do we need to lesson plan for? We're going to talk some about that. Okay, here's the second point I'm going to share with you, the difference in the types of subject. What are the core subjects? What is the difference between content and skill subjects? Why do we need to know the difference between them? So important. We're going to talk some about that too. All right, and then here's the last point I'm going to talk to you about, lesson planning versus a lesson diary. Yep, that's the insider's tip and trick. Because sometimes I've heard persons say, why do I need a lesson plan? Everything's laid out for us. Why do I need a lesson plan? Yeah, I have a lot to tell you about that too, and this is why. Because one thing, most of us like to be in control of our homeschool, right? Lesson planning gives you the control of your homeschool. So we're going to talk about that too. Okay, first, let me introduce myself if some of you don't know me. I'm Tina Robertson. I've homeschooled, like I said, about 25 years or more. We'll just leave it at 25 years. And I presently have 3 homeschool graduates. I homeschooled from the beginning. I took my first one and set him on my lap when he was 3 and taught him how to read. I had a momentary lapse of, I call it insanity, because I doubted my ability to teach him, and I sent him to public school, kindergarten, no doubt, because I was afraid he was going to be behind. Can you believe in kindergarten? I know. But as a new homeschooling mom, it's real important. And kindergarten's important too. I look back now because he's just fine. Of course, he's absolutely perfect, I think. Smart, intelligent, all those wonderful things, and his siblings too. But at that time, I just really didn't have very much confidence in myself. And there really weren't these types of groups to be able to ask questions. But I want you to glean everything you can from my experiences. So that was my experience. I sent him to kindergarten, took him back out, and I thought, well, he was already ahead. He was already ahead. Hey, Pauline, good to have you here, girl. He was ahead. He was ahead in that grade. So I said, I'll just take him back out. So from there, I started my lesson planning. Okay. I also have a Facebook group, Homeschool Dynamics by Tina Robertson. My public page is How to Homeschool Easy. And I blog and have a website at tinasdynamichomeschoolplus.com. I have a 7-step free homeschool planner there. I do lap books, unit studies, printables. I roll in an organized way just because, like I told you, I'm not very much of a wild child, but I've become wild in my later years and I'm kind of loving it. But I really do roll better by having a plan. That's why I have my little notes over here on the side. Okay, that's enough about me. This is all about you. And I want you to get these tips from what we're talking about today. Okay, here's the first point I'm going to make with you. How do we decide the number of days to lesson plan for? Well, 180 days is a good rule of thumb. Now, some lesson providers do 160, some provide 140, but 180 is a good rule of thumb. Don't get caught up in thinking you have to have X number of days unless you live in a state that says you do. Okay, so state laws always rule. In other words, you want to meet what they're telling you to do first. Whatever they say, that's what you want to do. But if you don't know, then 180 days is what you're aiming for. Of course, you can do 160. It's okay. Even some lesson plans have 140. That it's all good to go. It's about 10 months, say, of school. That's really what you're looking at. Okay, now, knowing the number of days that you want to plan, this is one thing you never, ever, ever want to do. And if I haven't read it once, I don't know how many times I've read it and I've come across. And I did it too. And that, oh, I did it one time. It only took me one time to do. And that is, don't ever lesson plan for the whole year. No. I told you, I really do roll in a more organized way. It makes me feel secure. I have to know where I'm going. I have to have an objective for the day. I have to have a focus. I want to accomplish something. And I roll that way. I try to get things done for the day. So I've said, you know what? I'm organized. I can do this. Oh my goodness. I'm here to tell you about 2 weeks into the hours and hours. Yes, I don't know how many hours it took me of planning the school year for all of my kids. 2 weeks into it, I was behind already. Yep, I was already behind. The family had gotten sick. My oldest had made progress in language arts that I didn't know he was going to make. He already just went leaps and bounds, and everything I wrote out for the rest of the year was a waste. It was a waste. Okay, so the question is then, how long do we need a lesson plan for? How far ahead? I've done many different ways. I lesson plan no more than 2 weeks. 2 weeks, that's it. 2 weeks is a good rule of thumb that I have found for lesson plan. I've tried 7 days, I've tried a month, but 2 weeks gives you, and this is why I say 2 weeks, it gives you just enough time to not, for the week, it already end, and then the next week is already here. Suddenly it's just, oh, where did that come from? Just kind of snuck up on you and you're like, oh, what happened? So by staying 2 weeks ahead, you have a little bit of give in your schedule. But a month ahead, with my husband's schedule at the time, he's had many different jobs. At this time, when I began homeschooling, he was a salesman. I didn't know if he was going to be on the road. I don't know if he was going to be home. I didn't know if he was going to leave early, if he was going to come home late, if he was going to have off for the day. And I surely wasn't going to tell him, oh, no, we're not going to spend no time with you. We have our lesson plans to do. I didn't want to be like that. So I wanted to plan just far enough out that it wouldn't stress me and that I could be prepared. But also, so that was life. I planned for life. But also, you want to plan with your kids in mind. I'm here to tell you, I had one kid, he went 2 levels up in spelling one year. Quickly. I didn't know where that came from. But now I'm here to tell you, the year or two before, we felt behind. We were behind. And I say behind, he just wasn't ready. He wasn't getting spelling. So we just stayed where we're at. We reviewed. And then one year, he went 2 levels up in his spelling. Now, had I written out even 3 months, a semester, a year, that would have been just wasted time to do that. So that's why I recommend not do that. 2 weeks is good enough to do, to have a handle on it and to be prepared and to recognize your child's development. That's why you're homeschooling, aren't you? You're homeschooling so that you can move along, stay when you need to, move ahead when you need to. So don't plan so far ahead. 2 weeks is good enough. Now, don't misunderstand me when I say don't have objectives or don't have goals. You certainly can plan for goals by the year. You certainly can do objectives, which objectives are like tiny measured steps. Maybe by every 3 months, you can do that monthly. I have some free forms on my site where they're even quarterly. I've done it many different ways. I've done it monthly, I've done quarterly, I've done yearly. It just depends on what I was trying to accomplish that year. So objectives and goals are very different than actual lesson plans day by day, right? Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, just 2 weeks for that. Okay, here's the other thing I want you to know, and that is that my lesson planner that I have, and of course everyone plans differently. I've used apps, I've used tracking software, I've used online things that have come into the homeschool world, and I always come back to just pen and paper. When I write something down, it just cements it in my mind. I'm able to remember it. It's relaxing for me. So sometimes these online software, even Excel spreadsheets, I really don't care for Excel spreadsheets, but you may like them. They may work well for your homeschool family. I don't really care for them because I want to be able to write it down, because that's part of the process of helping me to remember what we have on tap for the week or for that day. So my lesson planner, the 7-step homeschool planner, it's undated. It's undated. And that's what I want you to learn about your lesson plan. You just want to do lesson 1. And then when you get to it, you put the date beside it. Because the second day, you may have to run to the doctor's office. You may have to run a kid someplace. Excuse me. You may have to take care of aging parents. You may start on Monday, skip Tuesday, come back Wednesday, but guess what? It's okay. That's your day 2. So put your date on day 2 and take up day 2. Do you see how there's no erasing going on with an undated planner? It can just bend and fold and be flexible to your life. And that's what I want you to understand about my planner. It is an undated weekly planner, because that is the way that you have to plan too when you homeschool and live life, which is what we all do, right? Okay. Now, let me tell you one more thing here. One more thing before I get off this point number 1 that I'm on, and that is I want you to think like a teacher. What does that mean? Well, I am a teacher. Okay, yes, we are. But here's the point I'm trying to make. I can't tell you how many emails I get from my followers, and I love them all dearly, and they'll say, well, we start school August the 15th, and your forms start July. So that's another point I'm going to make. That's right. We don't start planning when school starts. We think like a teacher, right? So what do public school teachers do? They usually have in-service days. They go back to school early so they can do what? Yeah, set their room up, but also lesson plan. So that's why I encourage you about a month before you actually start school to lesson plan. Have an idea of where you want to go with your lessons. It's so much more enjoyable that way and not stressful when you're able to do that. Okay, so in teacher service days, and sometimes I've even let the kids go, okay, we have an in-teacher service day, y'all go play, because I need to catch up with lesson planning because it's that important. Sometimes I hear people say, well, I can't get to it, but it's part of my school. It's part of me teaching. So if I have to cut school back a little bit early for the day, I will. Or the kids can work on something that's independent that they don't need me. They don't need my help on, so that I can go ahead and lesson plan. All right, that's what I mean. Think like a teacher. Can you lesson plan before school? Can you stay? Remember how public school teachers, they stay after to what time? Yeah, 30 minutes after to 4 o'clock. Can you stay a little bit after the kids are done and lesson plan, write a few things in? That's what I did. I lesson planned when I sat down with my kids. I lesson planned before they started school. I lesson planned after they started school. I lesson planned a little bit in the evening. I just didn't want to take a chunk of time and say, okay, I'm going to do it here, so many hours at a time. I just didn't have to do that. I wanted to do a little bit of life, a little bit of relaxation, a little bit of lesson planning. And it really makes it so much more enjoyable when you can do it that way. Okay. Let me make the second point. I'm going to make the third point too before my time gets away. And then I'm going to tie all of this together for you too. The second point I want to talk about are the core subjects. It's so important to know the differences in subjects when you lesson plan. We just simply cannot give all of them the same weight of authority. I don't know of any other way to say it. The core subjects, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, are the core of every grade level from pre-K to high school. They always command and demand my attention first. They always command and demand my attention first. So the other subjects are called the content subjects. Content subjects will be like geography, history, science, foreign language, art. It really doesn't matter when we cover those subjects. So you have time to fill those in as you want to. But give attention first to the skill subjects, reading, writing, arithmetic, and what also is part of language arts. Language arts sometimes is this term we use, and sometimes we don't fully understand exactly what the definition of it is. But language arts really means anything that is written or oral speech is really what it is. It entails vocabulary, it entails penmanship, composition, public speaking, phonics, literature. And the younger grades, it's called reading, learning how to read. In the older grades, it's called literature. All of those subjects come under language arts, and they all don't come at the same grade. They come at different grade levels when we introduce them. So the point I'm making is don't feel pressured to have to lesson plan every subject. Give the weighted ones, the important ones, the 3 R's, attention first. That's what you want to do. Give those attention first. So put your math, your language arts, reading, writing, fill those all out first for 2 weeks. Okay? And the way my lesson plan pages are set up in the 7-step homeschool planner is at the top are the core subjects. I divided them out for you. At the top are the core subjects. At the bottom of that form are the content subjects to help you plan, because a lot of the content subjects, you can teach your kids together in those subjects. The top of the lesson plan has spaces divided out for each level or for each child, because they're on different grades is what I'm trying to say. And at the bottom are the content subjects. There's a space for the content subjects. So pay attention to those core subjects. Know the difference between a content subject and a skill subject. Again, content subject is anything else besides the 3 R's. Geography, history, science. It's not that they're not important, but you can plan them down here at the bottom of your lesson planning page, and you can plan them after you filling in for the 2 weeks where my child is. Okay, he's going to do this math concept. We're going to skip these vocabulary words, but we're going to do this grammar lesson. Okay, so let me just talk about that just for a little bit too here, because I have a lot of people that tell me, why do I even need a lesson plan? Why do I need to watch this? Because my lesson plans are laid out. And this is why. This is why. We're all homeschooling because we want to move at our child's pace. I've had so many people, not so many, but I should say a few, quite a few, say, I've never lesson planned. Well, sometimes it's not called lesson planning. It's called a lesson diary. That's my third point that I'm getting into. It's called a lesson diary. Why is it called a lesson diary? And that is because when we're new, or say we haven't used a particular curriculum before, we just don't have a rhythm of how it lines up with our child. And so sometimes it's best to write after they do something than it is to plan before. So that's another seasoned veteran tip. I'm here to tell you, lesson planning does include a little bit of writing down afterwards what your children do. And when I did that, it really helped me when I moved away from laid out lesson plans and I made my own. Then it really helped me to see, okay, this is how much a child this age can get done for the day. And then it helped me to project for the next 2 weeks what they could do. Okay, so when you write down the lesson plans, okay, for example, when I first started, I had a box lesson plan. Let me just tell you that with all of my kids. I had 3 of them, different levels. I thought I'd be insane. I thought I was just about to lose it because I had all these different lesson manuals, teacher manuals, workbooks. My lesson planner organized all that chaos and brought it to one place. I could flip it open and I could look for a week what each kid was going to do. I didn't need 3 different teachers' manuals. In addition, not only did it organize and bring it to one spot, instead of me picking this one up, flipping through these pages and trying to figure out where I'm at, but also the second thing lesson planning does, even when you have laid out teachers' manuals and a laid out lesson plan from a provider, is that you want to tweak it to your child's needs. We don't just want to hand the next page to them. If you've homeschooled for any amount of time, you know that sometimes you can skip about 10 lessons and your child is perfectly okay. Now, I never would have done that when I first started homeschooling. I just thought, there's no way, this stuff is sacred. We have to do all of it. But the truth of it is, it's not. You're the one that's important. You're the one that knows your child. That's why we have to lesson plan. But sometimes when people think lesson plan, they think everything from scratch, and it just doesn't have to be that way. Now, my lesson plans started out being more like an outline from the different teachers' manuals that I had, and then they morphed into actual lesson plans the longer I homeschooled. But it's beyond me for anyone to say, even when they have laid out lesson plans, that they're not lesson planning. You really are. I just can't imagine giving next assignment to your kid without looking it over and knowing, you know what, this is just going to aggravate him. He already masters this. He already knows that we need to move on. Or what's happened in my case too, sometimes they're ready to switch concepts. Guess what? My kid didn't get it. I'm thinking, and you know when that happens, you know what? We need to stay just a little bit longer on this concept, right? So we better go find some extra material. All right? My lesson planner is quickly, I can look back through it, not 3 and 4 different teachers' manuals from 3 and 4 different kids, 3 and 4 different workbooks. I can read my notes on my lesson planner and I can flip through it quickly to see, 4 weeks ago, we started this math concept. Guess what? He still doesn't have it. Okay, so maybe it's time for me to move on to a different math concept and let him have time to think about that. Then I'll come back to it. See, I mean, lesson planning writing down what they do afterwards is part of lesson planning. Moving ahead, even if it's laid out, keeping everything in one spot especially becomes important when you have multiple kids, different ages. I had to have one spot where everything was going on. That's why you still want a lesson plan, even if you have laid out curriculum. Tweaking it to fit your child, not just picking up the next day and say, this is the next lesson, here you go. We're really accomplishing something. We don't know if they are until we're writing it down and seeing how much progress they're actually making. Okay, so here's the thing. Our goals are different really for each kid. In your lesson plan, in your lesson planner, that's also where you want to write down what are their goals. What tiny measured steps do you have for each child that you want them to reach? That's also something that you want to put in a lesson planner. Now, how do we get these projects done? Let me hit just a little bit on that because I don't want to just be all over the place here. I have a lot that I want to give you, but like I said, I also want you to walk away with some things that will actually work. And that is, my tip has always been, the more kids you have, the less projects you do until they're a little bit older, and then they start gathering the supplies. When they're all young and you're doing most of the work, one project is enough each week. And in the beginning, I'd either would choose a science or a history project. Now, I tried to alternate it. Science one week, history the next week. That's a very doable schedule. If you think about it, at the end of the year, think about how many weeks of projects and how many projects you actually have done. And then as your house, you start collecting more and more materials. Sometimes it's easier to get them together. And then as the kids get older, they also can gather the materials for you. But the projects were just once a week. Unless the kids want to do more, then we don't do our regular work for the day and the project. We just do the project. Does that make sense? We just do the project. That really helps to keep from being overwhelmed when it comes to lesson planning. So one project per week is good enough until your kids get older. And when I mean young, I mean, if you have 4 or 5 kids under about the age of 7 or 8, usually about 8, 9, my boys got very helpful, and then they could start collecting, materials around the house and getting everything set up, and we could do more hands-on projects. So that's one of my tips for projects. Just do one. Even on my lap books, I hear moms always saying, well, how many lap books, all this cutting and coloring we have to do? Just do one lap book for all your kids. Let them do a mini book. Let them do something. Each kid do something and put in there in your one lap book. And as they get older and you have more hands, then do more projects. Okay, so that's my one tip for the projects. 2, let me explain something else about lesson plan. I want to cover a point that I have over here written down that I didn't get to. And that is, I talked to you earlier about when to lesson plan and how to lesson plan. I said to start with the basics, start with the core subjects, use an undated planner, give yourself plenty of room to write. But the other thing is, I know that a lot of homeschoolers say, okay, this is my day for lesson plan. They take out a chunk of time. That really didn't work for me. I tell you what worked for me the best. And that is when I'm sitting down with my kids and they're actually schooling, and I'm sitting down with them at the table or the schoolroom or wherever I was at the couch, and they're doing something independent, and I have about 5 or 10 minutes. I get one of my kids' workbooks. I look ahead. I read back what they did the few weeks, and I just fill my subjects in gradually. So by the end of those 2 weeks, the next 2 weeks are already planned. Sure, I could tell you something like sit down Sunday at 10 o'clock every night, but you know what? Or every week. But I mean, that really didn't work for me. And it's really crazy that I say this because I'm a very routine person. I like things that happen on certain days, and I'm very persistent, determined. I stick to a schedule. All those are good things about me. There's a lot of bad that I have too. I don't wish you to think it's just all good. But I think it's crazy that I say don't do that when it comes to lesson planning. And this is why we just can't, because we're trying to divide ourselves so many different ways, because when we finish school, we have so many other things to do. If we could just get up, walk away, and leave our kids, it would be okay, but that's not life. So that's what I said, when you're sitting down with them and everyone's quiet, I always did my lesson plan there. I always did there. I can count on one hand how many times I had to do it in the evening. And of course, that's when I first started. Like I said, I only lesson plan for a week. Well, then I learned a month was too long, and certainly a year is way too long. It's way out there. I learned 2 weeks was good enough, and it's just so much more relaxed. So I did a little bit on Monday while they were doing some work, and they worked a little math problems. I'm sitting down there with them. They don't really ask me any questions. Then I fill in a few of the blanks, whether it was language arts, spelling. I'm like, here are the spelling words you want to do. I'd look ahead and our unit studies, and then they'd have a question. Sure, you could get interrupted, but that's fine. You're just filling in the lesson plans for, the next 2 weeks. Okay. I also want to talk, I'm almost at 30 minutes here. Like I said, I want to keep it to 30 minutes for you too. I'm going to talk again in another Facebook Live about the actual lesson plan, what the parts of it are, how to do it with a book, how to divide it out. I just wanted to give you these major tips to start with, easy tips. And that is to decide a year, 180, 160, 140. Know that first. Realize you don't have to lesson plan for the whole year right away, and you don't want to do that because it really does not recognize you're really not recognizing your child's developmental needs, because you don't know if they're going to move ahead, they're going to stay behind. And sometimes you can end up frustrating yourself too, because you think, well, he should be doing this by now, when really there's no behind. We know that. You and I both know that. There's no behind in homeschool. There's just not. There's just where your child is. Accept it, love it, enjoy it. Unless he has special needs, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. When they get to work or they get to college, they're not going to ask when did they learn to read or when were they potty trained. They're just not. So try to savor some of it. Stay where they're at. Enjoy it. You as the mom knows when they're putting forth a lot of effort. When it was a month gone by, one of my sons couldn't get this math concept. I'm like, enough already. Let's move on. And I did. And guess what? He's just fine with math now. He's just fine. And you can do the same thing. So decide, do I need to stay here or do I need to move ahead? Okay, so plan for 2 weeks at a time. Use an undated lesson planner. Use a daily lesson planner, which is what mine is. I know some people say, I want to just look at the week. And I have some weekly overview pages too on my site, Tina's Dynamic Homeschool Plus. But I really prefer the daily pages because there's enough room at the top for put 3 or 4 kids down there. And then the content subjects are at the bottom. And it just gives you a lot more room to write. And like I said, you don't really have to set aside a specific time to lesson plan. I tell you what, by lesson plan on the spot like I did when I was with my kids, I have my pulse right on what's going on. I'm like, okay, we've struggled for this math concept for the last 3 days. The chances are we're probably going to have to break down this math next week because the concepts get a little bit harder. Do you see what I'm talking about? That's why you want a lesson plan for only like 2 weeks. So don't get all excited and say, oh, I'm going to be organized and do for a whole year. You know, you're going to frustrate yourself and maybe your child too and waste a lot of time. Objectives, yes. Plan for the whole year. I always have all these objectives, a long list of what I want my kids to read and what I want them to do. But actual lesson planning, 2 weeks. Focus first on the skill subjects. Write those in. Skill subjects are also called the core subjects. Math and language arts. They're also referred to as the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. Those subjects will go from pre-K to high school. And really, pre-K and really high school, your beginning and your end here, those are the only years really where your lesson plan may look a little bit different. All the cream in the middle, all the other years, they're basically the same subjects year after year, which is what I have in my lesson plan. So sometimes pre-K and for sure high school, it's going to look a little bit different on your plan. And those are some more Facebook Lives I have because I want to talk specifically about those grades too. But what I'm talking are general tips that will go from pre-K to high school. Okay, and then after that, then fill in with the content subjects like geography, science, history. You want to fill in them with those subjects and keep it to one hands-on project if you have multiple kids. Of course, if you got 1 kid, you've got more time. That's nice. Do more of those hands-on projects. I fill those in too underneath the content subjects at the bottom of the lesson planner. Okay, and the last thing is to remember, lesson planning also means to have a lesson diary. So in other words, write down, if you're not a good lesson planner and you don't really know, if you're new to lesson plan, you're not really sure how much your kids are going to do, just follow the laid out lesson plan and write down what you actually did for the day. Did it match up with what the laid out lesson plans did? Did it or didn't it? Then you'll know how fast you can go. You also want to look ahead, even when you have laid out lesson plans and say, you know, there's 20 problems here on this one grammar or math concept. We really don't need it. He's mastered it. Let's just do 10. That's why I said I can't imagine no one, even if you have laid out lesson plans, not ever lesson planning, even if it's loose lesson planning, we still need to lesson plan because we want control of our children's education. We don't want to aggravate them. We want them to move ahead when they're ready, and we want them to stay here and to linger on a concept when they're not, right? That's what we want to do. That's our goal. Okay. Let me wrap this up. Let me just share one more thing with you. And then, like I said, I'll be hopping on here more and doing more about lesson planning. But lesson planning, this is how I feel, and I wrote it down, will remain a staple in any well-planned day. You need to guide them. You need to tweak even laid out lesson plans. So those are just a few of the tips that I wanted you to take from this and the 3 points that I wanted you to take in how to homeschool lesson plan easy. Now, of course, like I said, I have another one. It takes another whole hour. I'd love to talk about how to actually get a workbook or a book, break it down, do the lesson plans, how it would go, and how to even do it for multiple ages and the early years. And I even have some tips for high school when it comes to high school planning. Those are all animals of their own that they need their own time. But just remember these 3 huge sweeping points when you get ready to lesson plan. And of course, write your questions down here, and then I'll try to get to them afterwards. Thank you. Y'all have a great afternoon, evening, or is it going to be morning? Talk to you later. Bye.